Hola, mi amigos, and welcome to my channel where I've been enjoying my high school Spanish class too much. So, today for your drawing, I have Inktober days 10 and 11, pattern in snow. I'm really excited about these pieces because I think that they look really cool, but we're not talking about that today, actually, alright? We have 3 things on the docket. None of those things are these drawings, so sorry about that. Anyways, so, topic numero uno. Band. Things happened. As of writing the script, today was our state competition and my first competition as a section leader. I do have to say that retreat was fun, but I have 2 big stories. They're really funny stories. So the first story is that I have a solo in the show, and I say that I say that in that way because I was given the sheet music for this solo 3 days ago. Yeah. Wednesday before the Saturday of state competition, I got the sheet music for a piece that I had to play alone. So I was panicking, to say the least. But I only messed up a little bit on it. It sounds sort of like that was how it was supposed to be played, so maybe I don't get yelled at for it. Wonderful. Alright, so second story. So apparently during the show, I literally had a hornet on my ass, and it was just sitting there. I mean, the whole show. I didn't know. I only know because we were walking back to the buses, right? And Mia's in front of me, and she turns around, oh, by the way, Carolyn, you had a bee on your butt. What? I didn't know what she was talking about. So, Haley was behind me. Haley says, yeah, it's still there. And then everyone's panicking all of a sudden, so I was like, okay, look, I'm just going to give someone a shoe, and they're going to slap me in the ass, and that's going to be that. And so I did. And that happened. But on to the second topic, which is high school landmarks. Now, what do I mean by high school landmarks? I mean this. Look, I got my class ring, and holy fuck, I love it, and I'm excited, and shit, like, I'm really, really happy with this ring. It was made by a family friend named Earl Brown. He's a wood carver, and I love my ring. I love it a lot. I love it a lot. You want to know what some of the coolest parts about this ring are? First thing is that literally the finish is super glue. And I think that is possibly the most amazing thing I've ever heard in my life, because it's really pretty, and it's super glue. But, you know, whatever. And the second coolest thing is that all he wants in return for me is some art. And I can't believe that, but I'm down. So, I guess there'll be a video on that one soon. But now that we've gotten all of my stupid stories from the week out of the way, we come to topic numero 3. Because it is Spoopy Month, we all know that during Spoopy Month, we have to have some spoopy stories. So, this month we're having extra Nosleep Radio. So for today, we have, I went on a meditation retreat in Colorado, but now I would rather die than reach enlightenment by u/Spooky Koro. Link to the story in the description below. To those of you who prey on religious innocence, I hope you rot in whatever hell you believe in the least. How hard is it to let loving, faithful souls like me live their lives in peace? The 2 men who ruined my life told me they were lamas. Although I had never heard of any lamas practicing their faith outside of my monastery, I took their word for it. They looked like Tibetans, after all, and wore the flowing red robes of Buddhist monks. Our first meeting occurred at a park. This meeting was so inspiring that I never could have imagined the horrors that were soon to follow. We didn't talk long before we got down to business. Tell me more about this cave, I said. It is sacred among many American Buddhists, said Tenzin. Not many people know about it. Most lamas keep it a secret to preserve its holiness, just like the historic meditation caves in the Himalayas. It is considered a great honor to meditate there. Typically, only practitioners with high attainment are allowed to visit it. Tenzin was the leader of the 2. He had the calm eyes and soothing voice of a meditation master. How he was able to so successfully imitate the demeanor of a lama, I am unsure of to this day. All I know is that people are a lot less naive than me have fallen into his trap. I've been wanting to go on a meditation retreat ever since I was a kid, I said. Why are you revealing this secret to me, though? I'm not a monk. That alone should prevent me from visiting such a sacred place. Tinson placed his arm around my shoulders and pulled me toward him until I was no more than a foot away from his face. No respectable llama would ever perform such an aggressive gesture, but I was too enthralled at the prospects of visiting this cave to notice this slip-up in his otherwise impeccable act. "That's the mindset that we are trying to break, Daniel," said Tinson. "If compassion is truly at the heart of the Buddha's teachings, then why do lamas prevent lay practitioners like yourself from meditating in the holiest of locations? Shouldn't everyone be allowed to visit these spots, regardless of their attainment?" "That's what Champa and I think." "Why did you approach me, though? You could have picked anybody walking out of the monastery yesterday. What makes me deserving of such a gift?" Tinson pulled me in closer. "We picked you because we can see your potential. Not everyone is destined to reach enlightenment, but with the right training and experience, you are one of those people." "He's right," said Champa. His soft voice drifted over my shoulder like the breeze twirling down from the leaves above our heads. "We can sense your wisdom and compassion. Enlightenment is a rare gift, and one that you will be able to achieve with the right training. Come with us to Colorado, and we will teach you everything you need to know." 1 week later, I found myself piled into the back of Tinson's car. My desire to go on my first meditation retreat compelled me to cling onto his tales of enlightenment like a starving dog does a bone. That thought that somebody as normal as me had the potential to reach nirvana filled my soul with bliss. I didn't sleep that night before we left, despite my best efforts. Visions of the cave that I would soon be meditating in consumed my waking eyes and morphed the vaulting ceilings of my bedroom into the snowy slopes of the Rocky Mountains. We arrived at the cave after a lengthy hike around 3 the next day. The moment we reached its mouth, Tinson placed his arm around my shoulders. "Rejoice, Daniel," he said. "You are about to enter the most sacred meditation cave in America. More lamas have reached enlightenment leaning against those beautiful walls than I care to count." My eyes widened as they drank in the beautiful scene in front of me. The cane undulated into the cliffside in spherical perfection. Bright minerals dotted the rocky walls in checker-like patterns and reflected flashes of blue and white every time my body shifted and changed the spread of sunlight pouring in through the entrance. "It's beautiful," I said. I followed Tinson and Champa into the cave. Our footsteps echoed as we walked. Rather than pause near the cave's entrance like I thought we were going to, my companions led me deeper into the mountain. I followed them silently for over a minute before speaking up. "Why are we going so deep into the cave?" I said. "I thought that we were going to meditate near the entrance. I can barely see." "You will learn soon enough," said Tinson. "Practice your mindfulness and we will reach our destination before you know it." I opened my mouth to respond, but then decided to keep my protest to myself. I was in no position to question Tinson. He was doing me a favor, after all. No other lama I knew would go through so much trouble to take me on a meditation retreat. Eventually, though, the darkness became so absolute that I began to panic. "I don't want to go any further," I said, voice rushed. "I can't see." "Don't worry, Daniel," said Champa. "We're here." Before I could ask him what he meant, I heard the swinging open of a door, followed by the shrieks of an indeterminable number of voices. These voices were laced with the tremors of insanity, and startled me so badly that I went stumbling into Champa, who had somehow maneuvered behind me. I yelped as he wrapped his arms around my chest and hoisted me into the room. The cries echoing around the chamber assaulted my ears with dagger-like stabs. I tried to break free of Champa's grip, but it was of no use. The man was deceptively strong. A few moments later, Tinson lit a torch, and illuminated the most frightening scene I had ever seen. 3 men and 2 women were bound, gagged, and leaning against the walls of the chamber. They were filthy and emaciated. I could tell that they had been held captive for weeks, if not months. Their clothes hung to their bodies in tatters, and such a horrible stench filled the room that I almost started retching. I trembled as Tinson approached me, brandishing a blindfold, and secured it around my head. The blindfold was soon followed by a pair of thick ropes, which he used to immobilize my limbs. "It is done," said Tinson. He forced me to the wall that housed the other captives. "We can now finally complete the ritual." "Let us rejoice," said Champa. They started bleating like horses, bawling like goats, and screaming like donkeys, the sound of which echoed around the chamber in an ear-deafening cacophony. These animalistic shrieks frightened me so badly that I soon lost consciousness. When I came to an indeterminable amount of time later, the sound of chanting voices filled my ears. These voices were coming from all sides of me, and sounded so evil that for a moment I thought that I had died and regained consciousness in the pits of hell. Then I remembered the events that happened earlier in the day, and almost wished that I had. Somewhere to my left I could hear the sound of something boiling. Whatever was causing the sound, it certainly wasn't water. Although I'm no expert in the kitchen, I have cooked enough pasta in my life to know what boiling water sounds like. The sound filling my ears gurgled and hissed, unlike water, which likely rumbles. Every time the cadences of the voices changes, or the volume increased or decreased, the sound of the boiling liquid morphed, like an old radio trying its hardest to tune itself to a hard-to-reach radio wave. The noises emanating from the mixture were so responsive and so thick, I can't think of any other words to describe the intoxicating effect it had on the surrounding air, that I believed the liquid to be a living entity. Although I knew this shouldn't be possible and tried to tell myself not to let my mind succumb to such nonsense, the sound of its sloshing were so organic that it had to be alive. The sound of guttural voices spinning around me made it nearly impossible to think. Even if I could think clearly, though, I doubted that I could actually develop a plan to escape from the chamber. My bonds were tied too tightly, for one thing. I could already feel bruises forming on my wrists and ankles, and I was outnumbered for another. The only way I was going to escape was if my captors let me escape. Given that this was just about as likely to happen as me conjuring a knife in my hand from thin air, it looked like I wasn't going anywhere any time soon. Despite this realization, I remained remarkably calm. My heart pulsed at standard 90 beats per minute, and my limbs lay relaxed by their sides. Based on my demeanor, someone might have thought that I had given up hope, that I accepted my fate and was ready to die. In reality, though, that couldn't have been further from the truth. I wanted to live, and live for a long time. A long time. For this reason, my calmness wasn't really a calmness at all, but a heightened form of waiting. What was I waiting for? Well, I really didn't know. All I knew was that I was going to punish these assholes the moment I got the chance for ever laying a hand on me. The time has come, said Tenson. The chanting stopped, and the echoes of the final shrieks jarred my ears like nails dragging across a chalkboard. Champa, he continued, test them. I heard footsteps somewhere to my left, and then heard a man start to whimper as he was hoisted to his feet. The sound of his frightened sniffling juxtaposed heavily with the guttural chants that had only moments ago filled the room, heightening the bizarreness of the situation. I listened in horror as his helpless body was dragged over to the boiling liquid. Never before had skin being dragged across stone produced such a terrifying sound. His very soul sounded like it was being yanked across the chamber, doing its best to use friction as its final defense before it was tossed forever into the steaming pits of hell. "Don't touch him, you bastards!" shouted a woman through her gag. Based on the proximity of her voice, I thought that she was lying somewhere along the wall to my right. I heard the dull thud of a boot meeting flesh, and then cringed as the air left her lungs. "Speak again and I will slit your throat," said Tenson. Now that the man was only inches away from the cauldron, the liquid started boiling faster, as if it were a stomach anticipating its favorite meal. It gargled and sputtered and spurted like blood coursing through hydraulic veins, and I listened in horror as he was lifted to his feet at its precipice. Lower him. The command sent the man tumbling into a frenzy. He began to scream like his vocal cords were on fire and thrashed against the ropes binding his limbs. The sound of his struggles caused the woman to go hysterical. She started screaming and thrashing and only stilled when Champa's knife found her throat a few minutes later and sent her screams tumbling out of the open wound in her neck. The sound of her drowning in her own blood mixed with the man's frenzied rippers in the boiling liquid, which created such a terrifying noise that it made the animalistic chants that had once filled the room sound like Mozart. Although the sound of the woman bleeding out on the floor was enough to break my calmness, the slurping noise the liquid made as the man's head passed through its surface shattered into oblivion. I imagined his face being scalded as the liquid wrapped its boiling tendrils around his face and prayed that his eyes had been closed. The moment his head made contact with the liquid, a hissing sound filled the chamber, followed by smoke so thick it irritated my nose. I imagined tiny particles of his skin hitching a ride on the smoke and nearly gagged. "Raise him," said Tenson. The liquid sloshed as the man's head was freed from its grasp. "His flesh remains. He has been accepted." The man's body tumbled to the floor beside me. I couldn't yet tell if he was dead or alive, or how badly the liquid had maimed his face. "Raise him." A pair of arms wrapped around my waist and raised me into the air before I even had time to move. Fear gripped my heart as I was half dragged, half carried towards the lip of the cauldron, but I refused to scream. I didn't want to give these freaks the satisfaction of watching me break. I shut my eyes, held my breath, and winced as my head was plunged into the liquid. Its rancid smell dominated my senses. Much to my surprise, the liquid wasn't hot, but frigid. Despite the flame reaching beneath its iron belly, I shuddered as the liquid crawled all over my face and plastered itself to my skin, as if it were trying to make a mold of my flesh. Even in my panicked state, I could sense that the liquid liked me. There was something about my features that sent it spiraling into a pleasured frenzy. Its tendrils were the fingers of a lover, caressing my cheeks in an embrace of tender bliss. I had never felt more violated in my life. Then, suddenly, without warning, my head was lifted out of the liquid, and less than a second later my body back on the floor. That my face was dry and pain-free shocked me even more than the billowing tendrils that had been stroking my face only moments ago. His flesh remains. He has been accepted. We have what we need. Kill the others. I cringed as I heard the sound of Champa's knife sliding through skin, leaving only me and the other man whose face had been plunged into the cauldron alive. Fall on your knees and give thanks. Before I had time to process what was happening, I heard the sound of 2 pairs of knees striking the floor at once. Tinson and Champa had supplicated themselves in front of the cauldron as if it were the god of the earth. A half-dozen animal sounds then filled the air and sent chills rippling down my spine. These sounds were even more guttural than the chants, and echoed around the chamber with such volume that I feared my eardrums might burst. A few moments later, a boot struck my temple and tumbled me into oblivion. When I awoke, it was dark, and I was sprawled on the steps of my monastery. How I had arrived there, I don't know. Tinson and Champa must have transported me back down the mountain while I was unconscious. I felt something coarse in my hand. I looked down and frowned when I saw a piece of paper nestled between my fingers. After taking a few moments to blink the fog from my eyes, I unfurled this paper and read its contents, which was barely visible by the light of the moon. Rejoice, Daniel. You have been enlightened. Your journey is just beginning. We will return soon.